Imagine building something from nothing. No inheritance, no connections, just a 6'5" Israeli immigrant with a magnetic personality and an idea that he believed would change the world. That was Adam Neumann. And for a brief, dazzling moment, the world believed him too. WeWork was once valued at $47 billion. Today, it stands as one of the most spectacular corporate collapses in modern business history. This is the story of how one man's unchecked ego, reckless spending, and total detachment from reality turned a billion-dollar legacy into rubble. Adam Neumann arrived in New York with almost nothing. He had spent part of his childhood on a kibbutz in Israel, a communal living arrangement where people shared space, resources, and purpose. That experience planted a seed. When he met his co-founder Miguel McKelvey, the two built Green Desk, a small eco-friendly co-working space in Brooklyn. It was modest, but it worked. People wanted shared workspaces. Freelancers, small businesses, and startups were tired of signing long leases for offices they could barely afford. Neumann saw the gap and leaped into it. In 2010, WeWork was born. The pitch was simple on the surface. WeWork would lease large office spaces from landlords, redesign them into sleek, community-driven environments, and then rent out smaller desks and private offices to individuals and companies at flexible rates. But Neumann never wanted to just rent desks. He wanted to build a religion. He told investors, employees, and journalists that WeWork was not a real estate company. It was a technology company, a movement, a community. He spoke about elevating the world's consciousness. He used words like energy and love in boardroom meetings. And somehow, people bought it. Major investors poured money in. SoftBank's Masayoshi Son, one of the most powerful tech investors in the world, met Neumann for just 12 minutes in 2017 and pledged billions of dollars. That single meeting changed everything. It handed Neumann more fuel than any one person should ever be trusted with. The unraveling of an empire. By 2018, WeWork had operations in over 100 cities across dozens of countries. It had more than 12,000 employees and nearly 500,000 members. The revenue that year crossed $1.8 billion. On paper, it looked like one of the fastest-growing companies in history. But behind the glossy walls and craft beer taps in WeWork's lobbies, the numbers told a different story. The company was losing more than it was making. Losses in 2018 alone surpassed $1.6 billion. WeWork was spending money at a pace that defied all logic, and a great deal of that spending was Neumann's own doing. He purchased a $60 million private jet using company funds. He bought several luxury homes. He employed dozens of personal staff, including nannies, chefs, and personal assistants. He threw lavish company parties while simultaneously telling employees to find ways to cut small costs. He even trademarked the word "we" personally, and then sold that trademark back to WeWork for nearly $6 million. His company was paying him for a word. The governance structure Neumann built around himself was equally alarming. He arranged a dual-class share structure that gave him 20 votes per share compared to 1 vote for ordinary shareholders. That meant even as investors poured in billions, Neumann could never be overruled. He had constructed a corporate throne and bolted himself to it. He once told people that his descendants would run WeWork 300 years into the future. The megalomania was not subtle. Employees who worked inside WeWork during those years have described a culture that oscillated between inspiration and chaos. Neumann had enormous personal charisma. He could walk into a room and make everyone feel like they were part of something historic, but decisions were made on instinct. Strategy shifted overnight. Resources were wasted on side ventures like WeLive, a co-living concept, and WeGrow, a private school run by his wife Rebecca that charged up to $42,000 in annual tuition. Both failed quickly. Meanwhile, the core business kept hemorrhaging cash, and Neumann kept expanding, signing billion-dollar lease agreements the company had no realistic ability to fill. The fall and its lessons. In August 2019, WeWork filed its IPO documents to go public. What happened next shocked the financial world. Analysts, journalists, and institutional investors read the filing carefully. What they found was damning. $47 billion in future lease obligations against just $4 billion in committed income. Related party transactions that benefited Neumann personally. a business model that had never turned a profit and showed no realistic path to doing so. The valuation crumbled almost overnight. Within weeks, WeWork's estimated worth dropped from $47 billion to under $10 billion. The IPO was pulled. Newman resigned as CEO in September 2019 under enormous pressure from investors and the board. SoftBank was forced to step in with a $5 billion rescue package just to keep the company alive. Neumann himself walked away with a reported $185 million severance package, even as more than 12,000 employees were laid off in the months that followed. WeWork eventually filed for bankruptcy in 2023. Newman's story is not unique in its blueprint, but it is extreme in its scale. The patterns seen in his rise and fall mirror those of other collapsed leaders. Jeffrey Skilling and Kenneth Lay of Enron constructed an elaborate financial fiction to hide debt and inflate earnings until the company collapsed in 2001 and wiped out $74 billion in shareholder value. Elizabeth Holmes of Theranos convinced investors and the public that her company could diagnose hundreds of diseases from a single drop of blood using technology that simply did not exist. When the truth emerged, the company dissolved and Holmes was convicted of criminal fraud. Bernard Ebbers of WorldCom falsely inflated company assets by $11 billion to mask a failing business and eventually served time in federal prison. In each case, the story followed the same arc: a charismatic leader unchecked by proper governance, a board too afraid or too dazzled to ask hard questions, investors who prioritized excitement over evidence, and thousands of ordinary employees and shareholders left to absorb the damage while those at the top walked away with fortunes. What makes the Neumann case particularly instructive is that the warning signs were always visible. The losses were documented, the governance failures were in plain sight, the spending was known. Yet billions kept flowing in because people wanted the story to be true. They wanted to believe that a company renting desks was secretly a world-changing technology platform worth nearly $50 billion. The lesson buried inside WeWork's collapse is not just about one man's ego. It is about the systems that enable ego to run unchecked. Strong independent boards matter. Transparent financial reporting matters. Accountability matters. When leaders are allowed to operate without any of these guardrails, the only question is not whether the empire will fall, but how many people will be crushed beneath it when it does. Adam Neumann did not destroy WeWork alone, but he led the way, and that is something no golden parachute can ever erase.